I thought we were a happy family until I discovered my wife's infidelity. I sat in my favorite chair, taking another sip from my coffee mug. It was Saturday morning and the faint smell of fresh brew filled the air. Soft music played in the background, but none of it could lift my mood. The house felt too quiet and I couldn't shake the heaviness that settled in my chest. Normally weekends like this were simple and comforting. My wife, Olivia, and I would spend our days together, filling the silence with EY chatter about nothing in particular. It wasn't profound, but it was ours. Her voice had always been a constant in this house, like a thread connecting the spaces between us. But this weekend was different. She was gone. I'd expected to spend the long holiday weekend with her. Maybe binge, watching one of her favorite shows or tackling the backyard project we'd been putting off. She was off on some personal journey, leaving me behind to sit here, coffee in hand, pretending everything was fine. She had left in such a whirlwind of certainty, suitcase in hand, barely pausing to explain herself. The memory of her departure was still fresh in my mind, like a bruise that hadn't fully formed yet. The emptiness of the house was deafening. I couldn't focus on anything, not even my usual hobbies. I tried reading, flipping through the pages of a book without a big saw, absorbing a single word. I thought about calling a friend, but couldn't bring myself to admit that something was wrong. I didn't want to be social, and I certainly didn't want pity. When the doorbell rang, I was almost startled by the sound. I opened the door to find my daughter, Ella, standing there. She was wearing a long black coat, her expression pensive, but guarded. She looked like she wanted to say something, but wasn't sure how to start. "Hi, Dad," she said, her voice a little too bright to be genuine. "Seriously," I replied flatly. "I wasn't expecting you. Your mom's not here right now." "Yeah, I know." Softly, stepping inside, as I held the door open, I glanced at her, trying to gauge what had brought her here. Ella was 19 and off at college over the past couple of years. Her relationship with her mom had shifted into something closer to friendship, leaving me on the periphery. Our conversations had become stiff and distant. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Like, we didn't know how to connect anymore. "Do you want coffee?" Leading her down the hallway. "Sure." Kicking off her boots by the door, Olivia had insisted on getting one of those fancy pod coffee machines. A couple of years ago, Ella had been thrilled when we bought it, gushing about all the different flavors. Personally, I'd always preferred a basic coffee maker, but I can't compromise like I had with so many other little things over the years. As the machine hissed and sputtered, I rummaged through the flavors, eventually choosing the caramel macchiato she likes. "So your mom?" I started hesitantly, unsure of how to phrase what I wanted to ask. Ella rubbed the back of her neck, looking down at the floor. "Yeah, I figured I'd check on you. See how you're doing." Her tone was cautious, as if she were trying to navigate a minefield without setting anything off. I wasn't sure if she was here as a neutral party or if she'd come as some sort of emissary for Olivia. "I'm managing. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." Sliding the pod into the machine and pressing the button. "Not great, but I'm managing. Mum didn't say much about it to me." "There's not much to say," I replied, my voice flat. She announced she was leaving, suitcase in hand, and walked out the door. "That's it." Ella frowned, looking like she wanted to argue. "She'll be back Monday. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." "Right, it's just a weekend trip." "It's not just a weekend trip. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Trying to keep my tone steady. This isn't a girl's getaway or a visit with an old friend. She's spending 3 days sharing a bed with another man. There's no dressing that up. It is what it is. Ella flinched, the word landing heavier than I'd expected. It's not that bad. Dad, she said, her voice defensive. She told you, didn't? She was honest about it. It's not like she's sneaking around. That doesn't make it better. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Handing her the coffee. It's not cheating, because she told me. Is that really the line we're drawing here? She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again, clearly unsure of what to say. I walked into the living room and collapsed into my chair, letting the weight of everything settle back over me. Ella followed me, perching carefully on the edge of the couch, her drink untouched in front of her. Don't you think this could be a good thing? She ventured after a long pause, like a way to get new perspectives or something. I stared at her, unsure if she was serious. No, I said, simply, it's over, Susie. This is a hard line. And she crossed it. The marriage is over. Her eyes widened, disbelief written all over her face. What are you talking about? You're just upset. Dad, it's not that serious. She's coming back and everything will go back to normal. I repeated. How can anything go back to normal after this? She didn't cheat. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Ellie insisted, her voice rising. She told you that's different. I shook my head. No, it's not. Being honest about it doesn't undo the betrayal. Fidelity means keeping the promises we made to each other. It's about trust, and she broke that. But it's just a weekend. Desperately, she's coming back. Susie, the moment she decided that her needs were more important than our relationship. It was over. She didn't just break a promise. She broke something fundamental between us. Ella looked at me like I just told her the sky wasn't blue. Her hands twisted in her lap, a nervous habit she'd had since she was little. I could see she wanted to keep arguing, but she didn't know how to push past what I just said. Dad, she loves you. Her voice quieter. Now, you're overreacting. This isn't worth throwing away 20 years of marriage over. You can work through it. People do all the time. I leaned back in my chair, looking at her, trying to figure out how much of this she actually believed. She doesn't love me. Susie, not anymore. Anymore. That's not true. She shot back. Immediately, her voice cracking with desperation. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Keeping my tone calm, even though the weight of my own words threatened to break me. If she still loved me, she wouldn't be doing this. Enthusiasm, love, isn't just a feeling. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. It's a choice you make every day. It's choosing your partner, choosing their happiness, choosing the promises you made to them. She didn't choose me this weekend. She just needs some space. Her voice trembling. She told me she's been feeling restless, like she's missing out on something. It's not about you, Dad, she said. It's about her. That's why she asked for this. I set my coffee down, staring into the mug for a long moment before looking back at her. Do you know what that tells me? It tells me she thinks I'm holding her back, that our life together isn't enough. And if that's how she feels, then what's the point? Why should I keep fighting for a marriage that she's already halfway out of? She's not halfway out, Ella insisted, her hands wringing tighter. She's coming back. She's coming back to what? Sharply. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. She just decided it wasn't good enough. A husband she could toss aside for a fling with some random guy from her gym. That's not love. Ella, that's convenience. Her face crumpled, and for a moment I thought she might start crying. But it's not. It's not like she's been lying to you. She told you. The truth, doesn't that mean something? I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. No, Susie telling me doesn't make it better. It makes it worse. Do you know why? Because it means you thought about it. She weighed the decision, considered how much it would hurt me, and still decided to go through with it. Ella opened her mouth, then closed it again, looking at me, like I'd just torn the ground out from under her. You want to know the worst part? It wasn't even a spur-of-the-moment decision. This wasn't some drunken mistake at a party. She planned this. She talked to you about it. Probably talked to her friends about it. Maybe even talked to this guy about it. She booked the hotel, packed a bag and walked out that door, knowing full well what she was doing. That's not a mistake. Susie, that's a choice. She shook her head, her hands still wringing together. It was just something she needed to do to be sure about your relationship. I couldn't help but laugh, but it was the kind of bitter, humorless laugh that doesn't leave you feeling any better. Sure about what we've been together for 20 years. We built a life together. We raised you together. If that's not enough to convince her, then nothing ever will be. Maybe she's scared, Ella said quietly. Maybe she's afraid of settling down for the rest of her life without ever knowing what else is out there. And what about me? My voice rising slightly. Do I not get to be scared? Do I not get to have doubts? Do I not get to wonder what my life might have looked like if it made different choices? The difference is I didn't act on them. I didn't throw away everything we built together for a taste of something new. Ella flinched, like I just slapped her, and I immediately felt a pang of guilt. I hadn't meant to lash out at her. None of this was her fault. Not really, but the frustration had been building for days, and it was starting to spill over. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Seriously, I know you love your mom, and I know you want to believe the best about her. But you have to understand this isn't just about her making a mistake. It's about her showing me, through her actions, that she doesn't value our marriage the same way I do. She looked down at her lap, her knuckles white from how tightly she was, gripping her hands together. So that's it. You're just going to give up. Throw it all away. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Leaning back in my chair, I'm not the one who gave up. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. She did. The moment she walked out that door, she gave up on us. I'm just finally accepting it. Alice ate silently for a long time. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Her expression conflicted. I could see her struggling to reconcile the image she had of her mom with the reality I was laying out in front of her. I didn't blame her. It was hard for me to reconcile to. I don't know how to fix this, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. You can't, I said gently. This isn't something you can fix. Seriously, it's between me and your mom. And honestly, I don't think it's fixable. Some things just break, and you can't put them back together. Her eyes filled with tears, and I felt another pang of guilt. I hated seeing her like this. Hated knowing how much pain this was causing her, but I couldn't lie to her. I couldn't give her false hope. I said quietly, I know this isn't what you wanted to hear, but I need you to understand that this isn't your fault. None of this is your fault. She nodded, wiping at her eyes with the sleeve of her coat. I don't want to lose our family. I felt my throat tighten, but I forced myself to keep my composure. You're not losing your family. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Your mum and I might not be together anymore, but we'll always be here for you. That hasn't changed. She nodded again, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. I knew it would take time for her to really believe it. I think you should go. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Gently take some time to think about what I've said, and when you're ready, we can talk again. She stood, slowly, her movements heavy and reluctant, like the weight of everything I'd said was pressing down on her. Okay. Quietly, I walked her to the door, resting a hand on her shoulder as she stepped outside. Take care of yourself, Susie, I said, and call me if you need anything. She nodded again, her eyes downcast as she walked to her car and drove away. When the house was quiet again, I went back to my chair and sat down, staring at the cold coffee in my mug. The silence was oppressive, but for the first time, it felt like the right kind of silence, the kind that comes after the storm has passed, when all that's left is to pick up the pieces. The silence of the house wrapped around me, like a heavy blanket. After Ella left, I sat there for a long time, staring at the cold coffee in my mug, replaying our conversation in my mind. I wasn't sure if I'd gotten through to her. Part of me hoped I had, while another part worried that I might have been too harsh. But the truth was the truth, no matter how painful it was to hear. I thought about Olivia, and the life we'd built together. The memories came flooding in our first date. The night I proposed. The day Ella was born. All those moments that had seemed so perfect at the time, now tainted by the knowledge that they hadn't been enough for her, for us. Monday evening came faster than I expected. I heard the sound of Olivia's car pulling into the driveway and my heart started pounding in my chest. This was it. The moment everything would come to a head. She walked through the door, carrying her suitcase, her hair slightly disheveled, but there was a glow about her that made my stomach turn. She looked happy, content, like she'd just come back from a relaxing vacation instead of a weekend that had shattered our marriage. Hi, Alex. Her voice light and casual, like nothing had happened. I didn't respond right away, just stared at her, trying to process how she could be so nonchalant about everything. When I didn't say anything, her smile faltered as she set the suitcase down by the door. Look, I know you're upset. Her tone softened, almost patronizing. But can we please just sit down and talk about this? I really think we can work through it. I stood up from my chair, feeling the weight of the moment settle over me. There's nothing to talk about. Olivia. She blinked, clearly caught off guard over Alex. Come on, don't be like that. It was just a weekend. It didn't mean anything. It meant enough for you to throw away 20 years of marriage. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. My voice calm, but firm. It meant enough for you to put your own desires ahead of our relationship, ahead of everything we've built together. Her face twisted into a mixture of frustration and guilt. You're blowing this out of proportion. I told you about it. I was honest with you. Honesty doesn't undo the betrayal. Olivia. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Crossing my arms. You don't get a free pass just because you told me you were going to do it. You still broke the trust between us. You still made a choice to hurt me. She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up to stop her. I'm not interested in your excuses. I've spent the last few days thinking about this, and I've made my decision. I want a divorce. Her eyes widened, and for the first time, I saw ill fear in them. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. No, you don't mean that I do. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. My voice, steady. You made your choice, and now I'm making my next. Please. Her voice breaking. It was just a fling. It didn't mean anything. I love you. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Shaking my head. Love isn't just words, Olivia. It's actions. And your actions made it very clear where your priorities are. Tears started streaming down her face and she took a step toward me, reaching out as if to touch my arm. I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted, but I know now. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I know I want you. I want us. I stepped back, avoiding her touch. You didn't need to sleep with another man to figure that out. And honestly, I don't think you really do know what you want. But I know what I want. I want a partner who values me, who respects me, and who doesn't treat our relationship like something disposable. Her sobs grew louder and she dropped her hands, letting them fall limply at her sides. I made a mistake. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. A terrible mistake, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can start over. It's too late for that. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. My voice. Some things can't be undone. Olivia, some things can't be fixed. She looked at me with desperation in her eyes. But there was something else there. To anger. So that's it. You're just going to throw away everything we've built together. Just like that. I'm not the one who threw it away. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. That was you for a moment. We just stood there. The weight of everything that had been said, hanging heavy in the air. Finally, she turned away, wiping at her tears, with the back of her hand. Fine. Her voice cold. Now, if that's how you feel, then I guess there's nothing left to say there. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Simply, she grabbed her suitcase and stormed upstairs, slamming the bedroom door behind her. I stood there for a moment, staring at the spot where she'd been standing before, turning and walking out the front door. I needed air. I needed space. I didn't know what the future would look like, but for the first time in days, I felt a small spark of clarity. This wasn't going to be easy, but it was necessary. I deserved better than what Olivia had given me, and I wasn't going to settle for less anymore. Here's the next story. Surprise gone wrong. I wasn't expecting this reaction when I presented him to my new AP. In the next life, I will never trust a guy. Again, men are really deceitful. I attempted to surprise my spouse with my affair. After we began our relationship, the fool decided to divorce me. Hello, Reddit. My name is Megan. I am 28 years old, and I am married to Nathan, a 48-year-old surgeon. Nathan and I have been married for 2 years. I wouldn't call my marriage to Nathan pleasant, because I was miserable during the years we were married. I've always believed that I married a loving man, who cared about my happiness, but the events of the last month have proven otherwise. I am about to lose everything. I don't know what to do right now. People often believe I married Nathan because of his money, given our considerable age difference. But that is not the case. I married Nathan for who he is, not his money. People often say that older guys are more loving, generous, and compassionate. I discovered this to be accurate, because Nathan possesses all of these characteristics. But following the wedding, I got melancholy. I wanted more from my life. Now, Nathan is a wonderful guy, but our age gap became an issue. I wanted to live freely, have fun, and enjoy life to the maximum. Nathan was cautious and conservative. Even though Nathan was extremely wealthy, he chose a low-key lifestyle. To be honest, life with him was rather boring. I noticed all of this while we were dating. but I believed I could persuade him to change as time went on. That's why I went ahead and married him. However, after the wedding, I realized how difficult it is to alter anyone. I desired to live a light-hearted, buoyant lifestyle. This was one of the reasons I married Nathan in the first place. God sent Nathan to me. He has altered my life in the few years that I've known him, but the only issue I had with him was that he was uninteresting. Our marriage isn't exciting, and our intimacy isn't particularly noteworthy. Aside from that, Nathan is a kind-hearted individual. He always ensures that I have everything I need after our wedding. He built a jewelry store for me and bought me a car. Nathan is willing to do anything for me. All I need to do is ask. He once told me I was his soulmate, and that he was willing to go above and beyond. He consistently followed through on his promises. He put my retired parents on a monthly stipend and is now financing 2 of my siblings in school. Not only that, but Nathan also gave my parents a stunning car for their wedding anniversary. My parents refer to him as the son they never had. Nathan is quite down to earth. When he goes grocery shopping, he also shops for my folks. When I count my blessings, I include him several times. However, the absence of consistent closeness and enjoyment in our marriage made me melancholy. I couldn't afford to lose my spouse. So I confided in my best friend, Rebecca, who offered several recommendations. So we devised a plan thinking back. I regret everything, because that marked the beginning of my nightmares on one fateful day. After Nathan had returned from work, freshened up and eaten dinner, I told him we needed to talk about something serious. I began by telling him how lonely I was in our marriage and how I wanted to spice things up. Nathan was taken aback, but after a few minutes, he informed me he had heard and would attempt to improve himself and make some adjustments. I told him I had some suggestions for how to spice up our marriage. He'd try anything to make me happy. Then, I advised him we should try to have an open marriage. Nathan's expression that day was something else. He was astounded after some time. He asked me to explain what I meant in clear, unambiguous language. I definitely told him that we should try to see other individuals. He asked why, and I just told him I wanted to be happy. He grinned and said it wasn't a problem. He's down with whatever makes me happy. He requested me to take him along and notify him. When I spotted someone, I was astonished because it wasn't what I expected. I expected him to create a scene, but he was calm. If only I'd known it was all an act, and that he was boiling with rage inside, I would not have proceeded with my idiotic intentions. That was the stillness before the storm. My best buddy, Rebecca, introduced me to a few guys. I honestly thought she was there to help me and wanted me to be happy. I had no idea she had hidden goals. Rebecca introduced me to Derek. Was a sweet and affectionate man. Young, lively, and engaging Derek. And I were about the same age, so we had a lot in common. Derek and I started dating, and everything was going. I wanted to tell Nathan about it, but my best friend, Rebecca, cautioned against it. She encouraged me to get to know Derek before telling my husband about it. I wish I hadn't listened to that devil incarnate. I took Rebecca's suggestion and kept dating Derek in secret, since I was loving it. I also appreciated Derek's company. Derek didn't work. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience and enthusiasm. I had to pay all of his bills. I even went on vacation with him to Bora. I was the one who sponsored the trip. I pretended to be on a work trip to find some jewelry for Nathan. He trusted me, because it wasn't my first time traveling for business. The one-way trip to Bora Island with Derek was wonderful. I relished every moment of it because no one knew who I was. I had plenty of time to relax and enjoy my boyfriend there. When I returned from that trip, I wanted to surprise Nathan with my new affair. That day, he was relaxed and cheerful, so I decided to break the news to him. I told him I had some excellent news and asked him to guess. He tried to guess, but couldn't figure it out. So, I decided to reveal the secret first. I reminded him of how he granted his agreement and blessing for me to visit other people. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Guess what? Nathan told me. He does not recall anything like it. I reminded him of how he accepted our open relationship. I went on to tell him that I had dating someone, and it had been 3 months, and I wanted to be sure of the person before surprising him with the wonderful news. At this moment, Nathan was already furious. His face was crushed. I could see wrinkles on his face, and everything broke free. When I informed him about my vacation with Derek, Nathan stood up and began making a scene. He grabbed my phone and banged it against the wall before I could make sense of what was happening. Nathan gave me 3 filthy slaps on the face. My face felt hot, like if someone had poured boiling water on it. I must be joking if I thought he'd ever agree to such a stupid proposition. He explained that he had been aware of everything, and was simply waiting for me to open my guttermouth and spill. I was dumbfounded. He explained that he had been tracking my movements, and was aware of everything I did. Nathan looked me in the eye and told me that the marriage was over, and that I should gather my possessions and leave his home. While I was still figuring out everything, he went upstairs and started throwing away my possessions. I was surprised by how everything turned out. I reminded Nathan that he had vowed to go above and beyond. I labeled him a liar and a phony, and he dubbed me a gold-digging prostitute. He told me I couldn't have it both ways, and that, if I wanted to have an open relationship, I should do it outside of his house, since he wouldn't allow such nonsense. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I'd hear from his lawyer soon and that he'd divorce me, so I could be free and have as much fun as I wanted. At this time, I realized he was serious, and I began pleading with him to pardon me. He said it was too late and I should get lost. He threw all of my belongings out. Even small items, like my toothbrush and underwear, were thrown away. Following that, Nathan dragged me outside and told me to get lost. What should I do? Gentlemen, I need advice. I believe I have used my hands to destroy my home. Please, I need advice on how to appease Nathan so that he would forgive me. Please be courteous, as I will be in the comment section. Update. Hey y'all. I'm back to update my story. So Nathan kicked me out that night. My belongings were scattered across the floor. Worst of all, Nathan refused to let me take the car he bought for me. He seized my car keys. Is there any damage my phone so I couldn't phone anybody? One of our neighbors used her phone to help me book a ride. My head was heated, so I headed straight to the motel. I just wanted to think about what to do next. I cried on the hotel bed. Then the next day, I returned to the house, since I assumed Nathan was already quiet, but nothing prepared me for the embarrassment I experienced. I arrived and met Nathan's mother and sisters at the home. When they saw me, all hell broke loose. They began hurling abuses at me. Nathan's mother branded me a shameless harlot. She said that I married her son for financial reasons, rather than because I genuinely loved him. She told me that I broke not only Nathan's heart, but also hers, because she loved and considered me her daughter. At that time, I couldn't keep back my tears. I started sobbing, like a child. I got to my knees and begged them to forgive me and petitioned Nathan on my behalf. The Nathan sisters lost it and started causing a commotion. They hauled me out and asked me to be permanently lost in their brother's life. While all of this was happening, Nathan was not home, so I stepped outside and decided to wait for him. After a few hours of waiting in the hot sun, Nathan came. He got out his car and inquired why I came back. I burst into tears and pleaded with him. The moment I saw him, he informed me he had made up his mind and that nothing could change it. He walked inside his car and took out a paper. While he was still speaking, he threw the paper at me, then drove inside. I picked up the papers and lo and behold, they were divorce papers. At this point, I began wailing. It felt like my entire existence had been wrecked. I departed from my folks' house because I had lost all hope. By this time, my parents were surprised to see me alone, as I had always visited them with Nathan. Since we married, they inquired about Nathan and why I arrived alone with tears in my eyes. I described everything to them. I told them how Nathan and I decided to have an open relationship, only for him to kick me out. Once I followed through on it, my parents told me that they would not pass judgment on the problem until they heard from Nathan, because it is better to hear both perspectives. My parents asked him to come over the next day, so they could hear his side of the story. Nathan holds a high regard for my parents, though I was only half certain that he would listen to them. Even treats my parents like they are his that night. I could not sleep. I was simply thinking and praying about everything. I don't think I've ever prayed as earnestly for anything as I did that night. I desperately desired a miracle. I wanted my hubby. I wanted my opulent lifestyle back, because I was nearly bankrupt from living in hotels and spending money on transportation. After what seemed to be the longest night ever, it was finally dawn. A few hours later, Nathan came. He ignored me and went to meet my parents. He didn't even welcome them properly, as he used to my parents. Inquired for his side of the tale, and he went on to explain everything in detail. He informed my folks about how I cheated on him and wasted his money. He informed them about how I lied to him, about going on a business trip and traveled to Bora Bora Island on holiday. Behind his back, my folks were disappointed would be an understatement. Their expressions of displeasure were clear. My parents couldn't say a thing. I suppose they were too ashamed to talk with their heads lowered and voices low. They begged Nathan to forgive me and forget everything. Nathan became annoyed by their statement and heated up. He told my parents that he would never forgive me. He informed them that the marriage was finished. At this moment, he rose up, and as he was ready to depart, asked for the keys to the car he had purchased for my parents' anniversary. Everyone was shocked. The entire room was quiet. He informed my parents that, because he was no longer married to me, there was no reason for them to keep the car they gave him, the automobile keys, and he called someone to come get it. At that point, I realized that I had no idea that the person I married was a soulless monster. I mean, what kind of man returns a gift he provided willingly? Only a shameless man can sink thus. I had no idea. He had such a strong temper. Honestly, I had never seen this side of him. Nathan's selfish acts infuriated me. So, I signed the divorce papers. Our first hearing is coming up soon. I'll be back shortly to inform you on how things went. Update. Hello. Reddit. Here's an update on my tale. So, our divorce proceedings began, and Nathan made sure I didn't receive a thing. I could not afford a good lawyer since I was penniless. That was how I lost everything. I didn't receive a single penny, but I didn't care because I still had the store. While this was going on, I kept my manager in charge of the store, and he kept me updated on everything. Following the divorce, I chose to return to the store, because it was my only hope. When I arrived at the store, one fateful day, I was surprised to learn that Nathan had sold it off. I was taken aback when I saw new faces at my store. At that point, I called my store manager. He categorically stated that the store's new owners laid them off after Nathan sold it. I asked him why he didn't notify me, and he reminded me of how he attempted to call me several times before I told him to take everything. To be honest, he tried to call several times, but I always told him no, because I was going through a difficult divorce and didn't want to add to my difficulties. When I requested for the store's account, I was assured that Nathan had cleared it. I nearly fainted at that point. My legs felt shaky. Nothing else made sense to me. I had no idea. Nathan was this heartless. He took everything from me. He virtually destroyed my life. The reason I didn't bother hiring top lawyers to assist me in obtaining half of Nathan's assets was the store. I figured I could fall back on it. Another reason I didn't fight for his assets was that I didn't want people to think I was a gold digger. If I had known he was going to sell the store, I would have sued and torn his properties. I sincerely regret everything. Now my family was not spared from his torment. Remember how I said, he always provided my parents a monthly allowance. He stopped doing, so he also stopped paying my siblings school payments. Nathan was not a good man. He was just pretending to be a kind-hearted man. He is both petty and strong-hearted. It dawned on me that Link's purpose was to entirely ruin my life. I was totally broke. He grabbed all of the expensive jewelry he had bought for me. I resolved to go confront Nathan at his residence, and I had the biggest shock of my life. I got at the residence and saw my best friend, Rebecca, who urged me to cheat on Nathan and disguise it at my marriage and ex-matrimonial homes. I had to clean my eyes several times to ensure that I could see. Well, despite the agony in my voice, I asked her what she was doing in the house, now that she knew Nathan, and I were no longer together. God Eyes, my best buddy, looked me in the eye and said, she was at her boyfriend's house. I nearly fainted at that point. It required all of my strength to maintain standing. She opened her nasty mouth and called me an idiot. She called me dumb for cheating on a man who loved and supported me and my family. She informed me that men like Nathan are rare. She informed me that she had always envied my marriage. As I had Nathan, she told me a lot of things that day. She went on and on about how the world worked in her favor and that everything happened because she and Nathan were meant to be together. I couldn't take any more, so I dashed up to meet Nathan in the bedroom. I was shaking and crying. I questioned why he chose to inflict so severe pain on me. It hurts to know that Nathan moved on only a month after our divorce, and not with anybody else, but with my best friend. Nathan opened his foolish mouth and instructed me to stop crying. Crocodile tears. He didn't owe me an explanation, because we weren't married anymore, and I didn't have the right to tell him who, and who not to date. I felt betrayed. While we were still conversing, Rebecca walked in and ordered me to leave, because I had no right to be in the room. She asked me to leave her bedroom. I expected Nathan to call her to order, but I was surprised when he seconded it and asked me to leave. Life is really amusing. I never imagined that such a day would occur when I was chased out of my marriage bedroom by another woman. It was my best buddy who brought this calamity upon me. I informed them I was not leaving until I received answers to my queries. I asked Nathan why he had decided to wreck my life by taking everything away. He told me he promised to steal everything from me after realizing I never loved him and simply married him for his money. He had also promised himself that he would leave me impoverished and miserable. Hearing all of this made me realize that guys are terrible. It occurred to me that Nathan never truly loved me, because if he did, he would not be able to look me in the face and spill that trash. I wiped my eyes and departed on the ride home. I continued thinking about everything. How dumb of me to have listened to and followed Rebecca's ridiculous plans. I never realized she had always envied me. I felt betrayed by Nathan. And Rebecca, I am the victim in this case. So many thoughts were racing through my mind. I wanted to get to the bottom of it because I suspected Nathan and Rebecca were seeing each other and had planned the entire affair. So I called Derek, my former sweetheart. Derek was broke, so I ended things with him. When I left my marriage, I even paid his bills when we were dating. So I didn't want to add to my existing liabilities. So I ended our connection. I called him that day because I believed he was also part of the plan. I pleaded with him to please give any information he had. I didn't intend to confront anyone, but I needed to have closure. Derek informed me that Rebecca had arranged everything. He informed me that he and Rebecca divided the money I was providing him. He told me that Rebecca told Nathan about our affair. When we first started dating, it turned out that my best friend was my husband's spy. He told me that Avi had also informed Nathan about time I felt foolish. I felt betrayed and developed depression. Nothing mattered to me. Now, I decided to get therapy because I thought I was going mad. I started treatment, and it was the best move I've ever made. I am still trying to let go and forgive myself for all of my stupid mistakes. Nothing makes sense anymore. But I'll grin. Again, my therapist made me realize that while I was a victim, I also damaged my ex-husband's heart and trust. She urged me to call him. I'd apologized for all the grief I caused him. I called Nathan several times to apologize, but he never responded. I did send him a text though. I hope he finds a place in his heart and forgives me. One day, I heard Nathan dumped Rebecca. Once he was done with her, Carm arrived early. She got served. She wanted everything I had, but regrettably, she will never have them. She is back on the street where she actually belongs. It has been months, but everything still feels like yesterday. The recollections are still fresh. I am currently job seeking, while staying with my parents every day. My parents and siblings never miss an opportunity to remind me how they believe my actions driven by lust and selfishness have ruined both my life and theirs. My siblings loathe me, and they continue to blame and curse me too. This day, I aim to find a decent paying job soon so that my siblings can return to school. I am taking each day as it comes. Looking back, I regret everything. If I could go back in time, I would make different decisions. Maybe, if I hadn't listened to Rebecca, I would have stayed married or confided in my parents or siblings. Maybe things would have gone differently. Just maybe. Hello Reddit. I'm a long-time Reddit member, but this is my first time writing here. I've always been afraid of putting my drama out there for everyone to see, because I was ashamed. But now, I don't care. I feel broken, used as if my world has ended, and I have no idea what to do. My name is Ethan, and I am 33 years old, so I'm still relatively young. It's not like I'm ancient or something. And my wife has to seek pleasure elsewhere. My wife's name is Isabella, and she's 32. Isabella and I have been married for nearly a year, but we have known one another for almost our whole lives. We were childhood sweethearts and dated throughout high school and college. We were the type of pair that would want to spend the rest of their life together. We have a 2-year-old, who is my whole universe. From embarrassing teenage crushes to the time we exchanged vows, I have always treasured our relationship. I feel Isabella, and I were meant to be, which is why I chose to ignore. I overlooked several of the red signs. We experienced ups and downs, like any other couple. However, nothing prepared me for what transpired recently. I'm sharing this because I need to get something off my chest. Perhaps someone out there has some advice or has been through something similar. Let me begin by noting that I grew up in an extremely terrible and religious environment, and I never left my home, and the church did not believe in divorce. They taught that marriage was a holy connection that should never be severed, regardless of circumstances. This made me feel confined, especially when my relationship with Isabella deteriorated. My family believed Isabella was wonderful and could do no wrong, when, in reality, she did a lot of wrong. Even when I told them about the problems we were having, they constantly spun it and blamed me. They'd say things like, "You need to be more understanding," or "She's just stressed about the baby." She completely ignored the fact that she was mistreating me. They were also the only people I could speak to from a young age. I was told that therapy was a fraud. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm, and a swindle. The church taught us that seeking help, other than prayer and religious guidance, was a sign of weakness and lack of faith. I know. Now, that's not true, but I can't shake the theology that's been driven into my head for so long. This made it extremely difficult for me to seek professional aid, or even contact friends outside of the religion. The worry of being judged or rejected was always with me. I am still terrified of my parents. Their hold on me is so powerful that it is difficult to break free. Even now, I believe that all of these things blinded me to the obvious warning signs that Isabella presented: her manipulation, refusal to contribute financially, lavish spending, and frequent disparaging of me were things I should have expected. But I had been conditioned to believe that my responsibility was to suffer and provide for my own well-being at any cost. I paid all of the bills because Isabella refused to work. Even before we had a child, she couldn't stay at one job for long because there was always something wrong with it. Or her co-workers. After moving from job to job, she eventually quit looking and refused to consider it. Whenever I brought it up, she would turn it on me, even involving my parents, since she knew they would support her. They did it every time. They told me that it was my responsibility as a man to work and pay the bills, not Isabella's. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Isabella refused to take a job. Then, she insisted that we marry. I rejected, because my parents. Marriage was not the healthiest. They stayed together for their children, and because they did not believe in divorce. And this had a significant negative impact on my opinion of marriage. But Isabella persisted. Then, she became pregnant. At the time, I assumed it was just a birth control error. But now, I see that she must have snared me with the pregnancy. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. She got my parents involved again, and they gaslighted and pressured me for a year until I caved in and married her. The wedding itself was a nightmare. I could write an entire book about it. Isabella dictated all of my decisions, pushing me to pay for everything, and insisting on a costly ceremony, despite the fact that she would not contribute a dime. She even had me pay for an expensive honeymoon. I had no say over anything. She dictated everything, and I was left to pay for it all after the wedding. Isabella revealed her true colors. She told me she wanted to be a stay-at-home parent because she saw how hard I worked to pay the bills and wanted to contribute by being present for our child. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I assumed it was a noble decision on her behalf, but I soon discovered it was all a lie. One day while she was gone, I searched her phone and discovered communications between her and her friends. She was ridiculing me, calling me foolish, and joking about how she never planned to return to work. It was a heartbreaking revelation. She had duped me into believing she was making a sacrifice for our family, while in reality, she was simply searching for a way out of work. I confronted her about the messages and attempted to discuss it with my parents, thinking they would see my point of view. But they backed her, claiming she was stressed out by me and the kid, which is why she said those things. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Isabella denied everything and turned on me. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Of invading her privacy and being neurotic. Until today, I had no idea how much she had alienated me from my own family. She would distort situations and conversations such that I appeared to be the unreasonable one. She turned my parents against me. They often took her side in arguments, leaving me feeling absolutely alone. She then ceased doing her tasks. Despite the fact that I paid all of the bills, I still shared the housework and even babysitting with Isabella. I didn't mind that. I had to get up early for work. I would still wake up at night if the baby cried. I made careful to split the tea case with her 50-50, but she still refused to complete her portion. Asked her out it. She would dismiss me, stating her hands were full with our toddler, which I tried to accept. But the truth was that I helped with childcare a lot, and she wasn't constantly busy with our toddler. My parents came over frequently and assisted with the baby, so she wasn't always overwhelmed. My parents, baby, sat for free, giving her plenty of time to get things done. Despite all of her assistance, She refused to help with domestic tasks. The dishes would pile up until I got to them. The laundry remained until I could finish it. And the house was in perpetual mess until I got the opportunity and free time to clean and organize. It wasn't simply the tasks. It was also a complete lack of respect and appreciation for all I did. I was working long hours to support our family, while also caring for the infant at home. However, when I attempted to address the situation, Isabella responded. As if it was entirely my responsibility, she would grow defensive, accusing me of not understanding how difficult it was to be a stay-at-home parent. She claimed she was fatigued after caring for our kid all day, but I knew that wasn't the whole story. There were other occasions when I returned home to discover her on her phone, watching TV or out with friends, while my parents watched the baby. It became evident that Isabella was taking advantage of the circumstances. She relished the benefits of being a stay-at-home parent, without truly carrying out the obligations that came with it. I was left to juggle work, daycare and housekeeping, while she did what she wanted. It was difficult and upsetting to see how little she wanted to contribute to our household. I began to dread returning home, because I knew I would be faced with a mess, and Isabella's list of complaints. I felt as if I were carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders with no help from the person who was supposed to be my partner. Then, she started arguing with me more. She said that I was no longer entertaining and had become boring. It seemed like everything I did irritated her. She claimed I was distant, which I was not. She was the remote one. It seemed as if she was rewriting our history to suit her narrative. She found fault in everything I did. If I left a plate in the sink, she'd freak out. If I arrived home 5 minutes later than scheduled, she would accuse me of not caring about her or the kid. She'd shout at me about the simplest things, turning little disagreements into full-fledged fight. It felt as if I were walking on eggshells. I was never sure what would set her off next. She used to threaten me. Whenever we had a disagreement, she'd say things like, "You'll regret this," or "You'll be sorry if you don't begin treating me better." It was manipulative and emotionally exhausting. I wasn't sure how to respond to her threats. I only wanted calm in our home. She started buying pricey purchases without notifying me that our finances were meant to be shared. However, she acted as if my credit card was her own bank account. She once ordered a 7+ using my credit card. When I challenged her about it, she shouted and began accusing me of being controlling and stingy to make matters worse. She convinced my parents to back her up. They claimed that my money was hers, and I had no right to dispute her purchases. It was infuriating. I felt like I had no allies, and no one understood what I was going through. She declined to discuss the purchases with me. Whenever I tried to bring it up, she ignored me or changed the subject. She operated as if she was entitled to spend whatever she pleased with. No regard for our budget or financial goals. It was more than just the money. It was also a lack of respect and communication. These difficulties were not isolated events. They formed part of a broader pattern. She was getting more domineering and abusive. Her actions were pushing me further away, and no matter how hard I tried to rectify things, nothing seemed to be enough. I wanted our marriage to work, but it was becoming impossible. The incessant fighting, threats, and financial arrest responsibility were simply too much. I was losing hope, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could hold on. I should have left sooner, but I was afraid not only for me, but also for the baby. She also began to nitpick about everything, including the sex and closeness. She claimed that we didn't have enough sex, and that I was too soft. We were having sex 3 or 4 times every week, but it wasn't enough for her. She would continuously complain that I wasn't meeting her wants, and it felt as if nothing I did was ever good enough. I was doing everything I could to keep her happy, but it seemed like the goalposts were constantly moving, and she began to be quite secretive with her phone. She insisted that I reveal my whereabouts with her, but she refused to share hers. My parents supported her, stating she was home all day as a stay-at-home parent. While I worked, They argued that she needed to know where I was in case of an emergency, and that I should trust her. Because she was always with the baby, I gave and shared my location, but she would not share hers. She would accuse me of cheating at random. Despite the fact that she was acting strangely and secretive lie, it was as if she was putting her guilt on me, attempting to make me the bad guy. She reset her phone's password and was constantly smiling at the screen, which of course is great honor. But the fact that she kept it so covert raised red flags. She'd been messaging someone, and when I asked who it was, she'd simply say it was a buddy, and swiftly put her phone away. I was worried by more than simply her secrecy. It was the abrupt change in her conduct. She stopped showing affection and began making excuses to avoid spending time together. She'd spend hours shopping or running errands, and when I asked about her day, she'd provide vague responses. I felt like a stranger in my own house. I tried to discuss it with her, but every conversation escalated into an argument. She'd accused me of being paranoid or controlling, which always ended with her storming out. I was bewildered and hurt. I wanted to believe her to accept that she was just going through a phase, but the symptoms were difficult to ignore. It wasn't simply the lack of sex, or the incessant criticism. It was about a breakdown of trust and connection. I was losing my wife, and there was nothing I could do about it. Little did I know that my wife was seriously cheating on me. She used me and even manipulated my parents yesterday. I ended work much later than usual. I mailed my wife that I might work overnight, but then realized I didn't have to remain. I intended to text her and tell her, but I changed my mind. I organized a surprise, take-out meal and a quick home date. Things have been stressful between us lately, and I'm hoping that this would help us reconnect. Our son was staying at my parents' house, which we had previously clashed about, but didn't seem significant. Now when I arrived home and knocked on the door, a shirtless drunk man opened it. He seemed perplexed. Then, surprised to see me. That's when it struck me. My wife had cheated. The guy simply stood there, unsure what to do, frozen in place. I ran upstairs, expecting for some explanation from my wife, only to discover her deep asleep in bed. I felt bewildered and hurt. I rushed back downstairs, but the man had already disappeared. The shock struck me. Betrayal. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Disbelief. Everything flashed through my head. How long has this been happening? Who was this guy? Why would my wife do that? I was enraged and heartbroken. I felt outraged and hurt. I wasn't sure what to do. A part of me wanted to rouse her up and demand explanations, but I could not bear the sight of her so angry and betrayed. I grabbed some clothing and fled. While she was still sleeping, I drove straight to my parents' house, where they were astonished to see me and immediately realized something was wrong. I didn't feel like conversing, so I checked on our sleeping child and rested in my old room this morning. My phone was constantly vibrating with calls and texts from my wife. I'm dreading picking up because I'm not sure what to say to her. I'm guessing she already understands what's going on, especially if she has been in contact with the intoxicated guy from last night. So here I am trying to occupy myself on Reddit and make sense of it. Oh, update. Hey, read it. Hi, it has been several days. I apologize. Things have been challenging. I greatly appreciate your help. It has been quite useful. When I wrote this post, it was simply a rant. I was not expecting the quantity of traffic it received. Now, let's just pray this doesn't make its way to my wife. Or should I say my ex-wife? Lol, before I get started with the update, I'd like to address a few often asked questions. What was the disagreement I had with my wife over our infant sleeping at my parents' house? As I previously stated, this is not very relevant to the context, but basically, and still believe our infant is too young for sleepovers with my parents. He's only 2, but my wife disagrees, claiming she needs breaks. Every now and then, she gets plenty of breaks, and I always take care of the baby. When I returned from work, she also knew how I felt about my parents and how I didn't want my child to grow up too close to them because of their beliefs. But, since my parents always supported her, she also disagreed with me on it. Who is the intoxicated person in our house? I do not know. I don't know him, but I can now affirm that my wife was sleeping with him. Will I get a divorce? Yes, cheating was the last nail in the coffin. Do I have an attorney? Yes, he is a close friend, and I will contact him. Those are the most common questions I noticed. I haven't updated recently, because job and coming to grips with things are difficult for me. I spoke with my employer, who was quite sympathetic, and offered me a break if I wanted one. However, I turned it down, since I believe it would drive me insane. The baby, and work are the two things that are keeping me sane right now. Regarding genuine updates, I'm sorry to tell that not much has transpired. As I previously stated, my wife began calling me frequently, and she eventually called my parents. I'm not sure what she told them, but my parents entered my room and began beating me. When I eventually explained what had happened to them, they calmed. That was not what my wife told them, but they also refused to tell me what she said. My parents then departed to call my wife, and after a while, they returned and informed me that I would have to attempt to forgive her, because divorce was not an option as she was truly sorry. I told them to leave my room, because I needed to ponder. They obliged and went, and that's when I contacted my wife and told her I was done, and that she must be cheating on me. We had a lengthy talk, which I will obviously not repeat word for word, but she basically copped to cheating on me. To our agent extraordinaire, Marilyn Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. That person, they had gotten intoxicated and apologized for it. That's when I informed her that there was no need, because I wanted a divorce. She freaked out, hung up on me, and quickly contacted my parents, who returned to the room and told me that divorce was sin. I told them to leave me alone, and I have been ignoring them for the last few days. I've been ignoring calls from my wife and my parents too. Thankfully, my wife has not attempted to come and take the baby. I've spent every free moment with him. Thank you for reading, and thank you to everyone that followed up with me and messaged me directly. I greatly appreciate it. I couldn't respond to all of the letters, because there were so many, but rest assured that I will read them all. Update. Hey, Reddit. This is me again. Thank you everybody for your great feedback. They keep coming, and it truly means a lot. I apologize for not updating in a long, but I do have an update. Now you've been messaging me, wanting an update, and I appreciate your care. It's been a few weeks, maybe 2 weeks since my previous post, and things have been crazy. First and foremost, when my parents discovered I was serious about divorce, to my agent extraordinaire, Marilyn Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. They continued preaching about how it was a sin, and that I'd go to hell. To be honest, that triggered something in me. Snap. I exploded on my parents. I told them to quit attempting to govern my life, and that I was an adult, not a child. I told them I was not only getting divorced, but also leaving the religion. I informed them that I would no longer be going because it was a nasty, judgmental environment. My folks freaked out, and when I returned home from work, the next day, I was met with an intervention. My parents had invited the pastor, some church members, and my wife. I didn't want to appear crazy. I knew how they could tell stories, so I sat down with them, spoke, and politely stated my reasoning. When I saw they couldn't see reason, I took the infant and left the house. It was fantastic. I brought the baby to get ice cream, dream, and we went about for a while. I mostly carried him, but I didn't mind. I returned home hours later, and everyone had departed, save my parents. But I knew I'd never be at peace, so I informed my parents that I was moving out. They panicked and attempted to persuade me not to, but I refused to listen. I'm excited to be moving in with a friend. Soon, I'll also be catching up with my lawyer pals soon. They were out of town and have only recently returned. That's all for now. I'll provide an update as I have additional information to offer. Thank you for your continued support. Update. Hey, Reddit. This is me again. I promised to provide an update whenever I had more to discuss. So here we go. It's only been a week since my previous update. But a lot has happened. First and foremost, I've moved out. Just as I said I would. My parents assumed I was joking, because I did not move out right away. They were stunned when I eventually did. They called me a variety of names and attempted to gaslight and manipulate me. But this time I didn't listen. They even refused to let me go with the baby. But I just told them I'd call the cops. Now I'm at my friend's house, and I'm feeling better and more relaxed. I also met up with my lawyer friend, which went. Allow me to show you inside. I own the home where my wife is now staying. I just haven't got the strength to kill her out yet, but my lawyer will handle it now. Fortunately, because I purchased the house before marrying my wife, it is not considered a marital asset and remains completely mine. My grandfather gave us the house as a gift. Furthermore, we live in a state where cheating immediately results in the loss of custody. I have a high chance of having the baby, which is the one thing I am truly willing to battle for. This legal advantage has been a big help, and it gives me optimism that I can provide a stable home for my child there. My connection with my parents has been a roller coaster. They were devastated and outraged when I moved out. They besieged me with calls and messages, attempting to guilt-trip me into returning and reconciling with my wife. But I held my ground. I made it plain that their manipulative tactics would no longer work on me. They even tried to use other family members and friends to put pressure on me. But I expressed my position to everyone, and the majority of them understood and supported my decision. I told those who didn't go kick rocks. Living with my pal has been like a breath of fresh air. I'm finally free of the toxic environment and relentless monitoring. My friend has been wonderfully supportive, lending a listening ear and assisting with the baby. We've settled into a new rhythm, and for the first time in a long time, I feel optimistic about the future. I've also started looking for professional aid to deal with everything. Regardless of my upbringing, I decided to consult a therapist. I'm still on the wait list, so I can't say much about it. Yet, my wife is still attempting to reach out, sending messages and calling incessantly. She has apologized excessively, claiming she made a mistake, and wishes to sort things out. But I've made it obvious that there is no going back. The trust has been destroyed, and I cannot subject myself or our child to such volatility. I'm taking things one step at a time, with the goal of improving my life, and that of my child. There is still a long road ahead of me, but I am prepared to face whatever comes next. Thank you for your ongoing support and good thoughts. They've meant everything to me during this difficult period. I'll keep you posted on any fresh developments. Update. Hey, Red. It has been a while, months, to be precise. I'm sorry for not posting in such a long period. Life got busy, and I sort of forgot about Reddit. I owe you an update, and I apologize for not providing it sooner. First and foremost, the divorce has been finalized, and I have lost communication with both my parents and my ex. There's not much to say about the judicial proceedings. It was a brief struggle. Thankfully, she cheated. And what about the loss? She had her custody taken away. As a result, she generated quite a stir in court. She didn't receive anything. There is no alimony or anything from the house. We had barely been married a year, so we had no debts to split. Everyone just separated their finances and went their own way. I obtained custody, and she had visitation privileges, which was the finest outcome. She continued to try to approach me and resolve things outside the courthouse, but I ignored her and instructed her not to contact me unless it was about the baby. And that's it. I also received a raise at work, which implies more money for me, but also longer hours. However, I am really good at juggling everything. I still spend a lot of time with the infant and occasionally take him with me to work. He just has a short time till he enters preschool. Remember how I indicated in my previous post that my lawyer would assist me in kicking Isabella out? She refused to go because she had nowhere to go. But she was eventually evicted. I returned to the house, because despite the unpleasant recollections, it was the closest to work and had a shorter commute than my friend's house. And that is how my life is. Now, I don't talk to Max very much unless it's regarding the kid, and I rarely talk to my parents. I no longer attend church, and I'm so pleased. I'm also in treatment, which has been quite beneficial. Thank you all very much. Your words meant a lot to me and helped me while I was in a terrible place. I will be eternally grateful, and I pray no one else ever has to go through what I did. Life is much better. Today, I found serenity and contentment, and I'm working to create a positive atmosphere for my child. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened.